Hello, true art believers, and welcome to today's installment of the Artist Interview Series. I got a very special guest today, a great friend, a great musician. I will be talking with Nick Diomedes. Nick has spent the last 9 years as a professional freelance musician in Nashville, Tennessee. In 2020, prior to the pandemic, Nick switched careers and became a realtor. While he no longer spends most of the year on tour, he continues to play whenever he's available and spends most of his time at home helping clients purchase real estate. Before we start, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and smash the notifications bell. Thank you and enjoy the conversation. Wait, sorry. That's the wrong one. I'm so sorry. That's the wrong intro. Here's the real one. Hey, hello, Nick. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nick Diomedes, it is a pleasure to have you here. I am really grateful, to have you as a friend and to have you on today because you are the first musician I have spoken with or have had on this artist interview series. And I am ready to kind of get into nitty gritty.
All right. Well, hopefully I don't set the bar too low for
or too high or is it too low?
I don't know. Maybe it will be really low. And then anyone you have next after me, doesn't have to shoot too high to have an impact.
So Nick, this conversation's over. We're done, and see you later.
All right.
No,
it was good catching up.
Yeah, that was. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation. It was a great interview. I will call you next week, right?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe in a couple months or something like that.
Yeah, I'll send you a Christmas card.
Yes, definitely. So Nick, tell me a little bit about your childhood interest with music. Like, what started it? Like, what was the fire that ignited it? Your musical journey.
Well, according to my parents, I used to beat on everything, beat on the TV, pots and pans, whatever. And this is at an age that I don't recall. But yeah, I guess around 9 or 10, I kind of started hitting on things. I remember getting some buckets out of the garage and hitting, just picking sticks out of the yard and hitting. And so my parents decided to start getting me drum lessons. Then I bought a drum set, or they bought a drum set. That was probably about 10. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that would be an interesting question for you. It's like, why do any of us gravitate towards the things that we get interested in? Especially whenever you're kids, you don't even have any preconceptions about what you're going to do with it. You find an interest and you go do it, as opposed to being an adult. It's like, how do I monetize this?
Well, I remember as your friend, as your neighbor, I remember you were just highly motivated from my perspective. I think we were talking about this yesterday when we were doing a tech check. But from your perspective, it almost, you didn't seem like it was like you're working or you're really putting in the time. But from other people, when I'd speak with other people in school, when we were in high school, right? And they would mention how you were just like drum training, you just be doing the basics over and over again. I remember coming to your house and you had one of those drumsticks that are like just wires. Little bit wires,
just brushes. Yeah.
And you were just doing the same thing, whatever, like just one like motion over and over again. And apparently you have been doing that for like hours or at least 30 minutes. uh, um, way longer um, than the average person would be able to do, because it's just one thing repeated over and over again.
Right. Well, yeah. I was always fascinated with like the body mechanics of playing. That's kind of what I was always interested in when I was a kid. And I mean, I'm still pretty interested in the body mechanics of playing. I would say I don't feel like when I look back on it, especially whenever I think about kind of the people that I went to college with, my practicing or studying was pretty, I don't know, pretty loose compared to some of the people that I ended up going to college with. So yeah, I think it was just there was a lot of energy being thrown into playing, but I'm not sure that I would go so far as to say that I was like really studying or really having like a great use of that time that I was playing. When at least whenever I was in high school, it was all just kind of fun, which there's value to that. But yeah, I wasn't going so far as to say I wouldn't go so far as to say I was like really studying and making a ton of progress, or at least not nearly as much progress as I could have made.
What's studying with music? Like how do you study in that regard? Because when I see, again, I was it's from a different lens. I was looking in from a different vantage point. I'm seeing you practicing, and is that's not studying? That's maybe where you like you said the body mechanics, where you just uh, um, building that muscle memory so that action becomes easier.
Yeah, yeah. I guess so. What I was doing is I was playing a lot, and yeah, there was some muscle memory being developed. Um, but I guess where I would say like where I wasn't studying, it's like I didn't exactly have like an objective. I wasn't looking at like, all right, this is what I need to improve on, or here's like a weak area in my playing, and so I'm going to spend a bunch of time working on it, and I'm going to kind of reflect on what I work on over the course of a week or so, and we'll start kind of making adjustments and getting better. Taking just real basic logical steps towards improvement. I think I had a reasonable amount of talent right out the gate, and a lot of things were kind of easy, and so I didn't take it that seriously. And so I think a lot of the time that you probably saw me playing, and this isn't to say that I didn't improve as a teenager, but I just think it was just too casual. So I would say I wasn't studying compared to some of the people that I went to college with that were, I mean, they were pretty impressive as 18-year-old kids, which I think I was in like our small little pond. But going to a school full of some really, really talented people, it's like I was like at the bottom of the barrel when I got there.
Oh yeah,
which I kind of expected, but it was a little bit more of a shock than I had anticipated. So
did you like use them as a measure of talent and try to become comparable to them?
yeah, I mean, I think especially whenever you're a kid, you're 18, 19, 20, it's hard to not compare yourself to your colleagues, especially whenever you're not really adding up to how good they are. And I mean, I'd say that's even something that is a challenge today. You watch people do things that you can't do, and you either have to be okay with it, or try to work on some of those weaknesses in your playing. Yeah, I think as I get older, it's not very interesting anymore. But I think as a young person, it's difficult to not compare yourself to your colleagues.
And when you were, I guess, you mentioned something about like the critically evaluating yourself, right? Where you're like, here's a weak point, let me attack that. let me work on that. And that's funny. Like, no, it's not funny. It's maybe it's funny, or but more like interesting, or a good point. But if I think about myself as a teenager in high school, I don't know if I necessarily. Well, we did. There were critical evaluations where you critiqued yourself, but there wasn't, to my understanding, to my limited experience on that on Earth, right? I didn't. It wasn't necessarily entirely clear, like how I would improve. Like what channels of art or like study should I be going to improve to get to X, to that destination, and so like I think even though you're saying you weren't maybe not improving the same at the pace that you probably should have, or if you want to self-reflect, that muscle memory I think is really invaluable, especially with like being able to just do something at a high level very easily because you've gotten all those reps in, so you're able to do some stuff that an average drummer will find really difficult because they haven't gotten that. They just haven't like ingrained in their muscles and their hand-eye coordination, or whatever the synaptic connection is, to pull that off without actually really focusing, So maybe you're like you're comparing yourself to other people at like such a high level, but maybe you were able to do like some of the lower stuff easier than them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just pulling strings or something, pulling threads. But yeah, I do think when you're younger, you don't really know like how to constructively critique yourself. And also when you also, as a kid, man, you got an ego, right? You got a big ego. You're like, you don't want to point out your flaws and have to like fix them, in like stuff that you like doing. Like, oh yeah, I'm really sucky at anatomy. Like, well, you got to practice anatomy. No, I don't want to. That's terrible. That sounds like a terrible idea. I'll just keep like covering up the anatomy with like clothing or something like that, So there's a lot of that going on there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure it ever gets any easier. You're just willing to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, whenever you're really critical with yourself, or you have somebody else that's really critical on your work or whatever it is you're critiquing, not sure that gets easier as you get older. I think you're willing to accept that it's part of the process.
Yeah.
I certainly can't speak for you, but if you had somebody critique your work and they had some valuable critiques, they weren't just like making kind of a subjective commentary on it, but actually had some critiques, I'm sure you would accept it, and you would end up using that information and incorporating it in some way, but your ego is still going to take a hit even at 30. What, you're 37, 36?
Yeah, old.
Yeah, we're all getting old. And I think we should say, for anyone that might be listening, like, I've known Matt since I was like 10. We've known each other for a long time. We grew up like 3 houses down from each other. So yeah, we're just getting old. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's a privilege.
That is true. We've been together. We've not been together. You want to be together? No. So Nick, I want to know, like, during your, let's just kind of like, we're not going to get into the history yet. I want to know, like, before like when you're practicing your art, your craft, right? What was your typical day like, with as far as like, when you were a day that was relegated to drumming, making music, or that sort of like musical day, however you would call it? What was it like?
Well, it's changed depending on the time period. So are we talking about college or are we talking about as a professional?
Um, let's go through the whole year history, if you
Okay,
want,
so
if you'd like.
if we're talking about, I would say starting with college, the school I went to, you would take drum set lessons, but you're also required to take other percussion lessons. So you would have to take a semester of timpani, a couple of semesters of marimba, which are the wooden keyboard instruments that you play with mallets. Vibraphone, which is that same kind of keyboard, but they're metal bars, and snare drum. So you'd have to take a bunch of different lessons in addition to all your drum set stuff. And then you also had a bunch of classes that had to do with improv. So you'd be transcribing solos for some of those classes. And for the uninitiated, transcribing would be listening to a piece of music and then writing down with musical notation whatever you heard. And so in college, it was really just trying to get through all of the projects that you had to get through in the course of the week. So I mean, I guess a day would be wake up, take whatever classes I had to go and basically start learning tunes for either one of those improv classes or for drum set lessons. The drum set lessons would also have some coordination exercises or different styles. And so you're just kind of going out of a book on a lot of stuff. You're just going out of a book and trying to get through a set number of exercises through the course of the week, be able to play it at some level of competency. And then you were transcribing and trying to play in the style of whichever drummer you're listening to. So if we were to backtrack a little bit, what I was good at in high school was taking music and playing whatever was written on the page. It's pretty good at coordination stuff as well. But there's not a whole lot of interpretation there. You're just taking information and executing it. So what I wasn't good at when I got to college was listening to a drummer and then being able to listen to them, kind of interpret what was happening, and either execute something that I was playing in that style, or even just articulate why they sounded the way they did. So those were things that were my weak points when I went to college, and it took a long time for me to learn that. And so yeah, I would say most of college was just like trying to get through the workload that they gave you, and never really feeling like you got there. It was always like you're kind of, for me anyway, I felt like I was always half-assing everything because there was just too much. And I think that's kind of by design, whether they would want to admit it or not. I think most people probably feel that way. So that was college. And as a professional musician, it's a little bit different. There are some days where I would just be learning music for a gig, and it depends on what kind of gig you're doing. Sometimes everything really needs to be memorized. Sometimes, like if you're playing a cover band gig, you might be playing for 4 hours and playing a bunch of random top 40 tunes. And if that's the case, I'll usually have charts and I'll just read. So it might just be kind of listening to something once down, make a chart, double check anything that you're kind of concerned with, and then moving on to the next song and just going down the set list until you've got everything done, and then going and playing the gig. If everything has to be memorized, it's a little bit different. It's usually same process of charting everything, and then usually taking a set list in chunks, take like 3 or 4 songs and work on them over the course of a couple of days until I feel pretty comfortable with them. And even that, there's kind of a process with that. It's like reading it, listening to music, and then ultimately getting to the point where you're just listening to the music, not reading anything. And yeah, so, and then getting to the point where you can just play it from memory without listening to a recording. And again, it kind of depends on how much time you have. In Nashville, tours don't last very long. So for example, Los Angeles, a tour leaves LA and you're kind of on the road for 6 months or maybe longer. And so you've got like a bunch of rehearsal time up to the tour. you play the tour ends, and you're unemployed. In Nashville, because we're so close to most of the metropolitan areas in the country, you kind of don't have the winter time is definitely slower, but you don't have like the tour like start to finish. You just kind of starting in March, you work on the weekends, you're home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll leave Wednesday night, play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're home Sunday. And so sometimes whenever you end up on gigs or people are being replaced, you really only have a couple of days to get through to get acquainted with the music. And I know a lot of people that'll probably spend a week or two on charts just because you don't have a week worth of rehearsals. It's like, hey, can you do this gig? You get the music, you get the board tapes, which would be a recording of a live show, so you can see or hear any of the differences from the recording that was released commercially to what's being played live. And you just kind of go do it. And you just start making little corrections as you go. So there are a couple of tours in town that are big enough where they do spend like the week doing production, but it's not I wouldn't say it's necessarily the common experience for most working musicians in town. There's a handful of people that do stuff like that, but.
Do you have is there like a morning routine that you do? Do you do like any type of like habitual thing over and over every day? It doesn't have to be done in the morning. It could be like a nightly thing, a afternoon thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely coffee is first thing no matter what. I don't really like working out first thing. I like to wake up with 2 or 3 hours before I actually have an obligation, because I'd like to spend that first hour just drinking coffee.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and just nothing else. Maybe I might read. I might goof off on the internet. I might listen to a record. I like the habit of listening to a record in the morning with coffee, but sometimes I just don't feel like it. So I don't know. I keep it kind of loose by design. I know some people are like, I do all of these things by 8 a.m. and that's great. God bless them. I'll wake up at 6, have my coffee from 6 to 7, and then 7 to 8, I kind of spend that time just waking up. Like I said, goofing off on the internet. Around 8, I'll go to the gym, come home, and then between 9 and 10, I'll kind of get showered. And after like 10 is when I kind of prefer to start my day if I can. If things have to happen earlier than that, that's fine. But a perfect day, I've got those like 4 hours to like get my day going.
Gosh, I wish I had that perfect day. I wish I had like an hour to sit down and just drink coffee. I tried it. And it just never worked out. Not because of me. It's because I'm a father.
Yeah.
But like
you've got a little human running around the house, and I don't, which is why I'm afforded that luxury.
So like it's like I've done it a couple times, and it's nice. It is incredibly nice to kind of like just like. Well, I mean, when you're younger, when you're younger, there's this need to be like stimulated like all day long, and like the older you get, like you just want to like tell the stimulation to jog on, go away. You're like I have enough of it already, and it like I think as you get older, also you gotta like it's got to be more and more interesting, or it's really got to be something you haven't seen to like just. But then again, who knows? Like I was on YouTube and the algorithms were sending me the stuff, the same things that I like just enough to watch it for a certain amount of time, and then I'm like, well, this was interesting, and it sends me another one. I'm like, well, what if I want to look up how to bake things? Stop sending me all the same things over and over again. But yeah, I do enjoy a good cup of coffee. What I don't do an hour. I think 30 minutes, but it's really just enough for me to finish my cup of coffee. And I actually kind of push it sometimes. Like I'll take like small little sips, because once that coffee's done, you got like it's like hitting the ground running for me. Like I just have to do I don't have to, but like I have these things I have to do before everyone's up, and if I don't do it, they don't get done, or they get done very poorly, and it's just what it is. Um, I totally forgot what I was going to ask. But
I
do
don't
you
know.
have?
We were just starting with morning routine, so I don't know
Oh
if
yeah.
there's a follow up to that.
Oh, the do you have like did you? I don't know if you still have this, but did you have like an allocation of time where you would actually do like music, like study, or was it always just going towards gigs and just practicing what they had to give you?
Yeah, I think whenever I was in my early 20s, I was a lot better about that. And then into my like mid to late 20s, around the time that I moved to Nashville, it was just like learning tunes, and trying to reach a level of competency
Yeah.
in town, so that I was getting calls for gigs. And I think now I'm a little bit better about it, actually. I'm not sure that I would go so far as to say that I'm studying like I have in the past. It's not that structured. But yeah, I mean, I think last year, on the back half of last year, it was the first time I'd started listening to music again for pleasure in years. I got to stop listening to stuff. Totally uninterested. Um, and yeah, just kind of burnt out on the whole thing. Just like learning tunes all the time and then playing gigs all the time. Just wasn't interested. I mean, most of last year I just listened to podcasts. So it's only been kind of recently that I've been going and listening to records again. And like I said, I wouldn't say I'm studying them so much, not yet anyway. But um, I think something that was important for me was like getting away from being a musician to like pay my bills.
Yeah.
That whole experience it wasn't what I envisioned, and yeah, the experience just ended up being really unpleasant. Uh, and that's not to say it was all bad. Like I've met some of my best friends playing, and I still enjoy playing, but the kind of gigs I was having to do to pay my bills were not the kind of gigs that I wanted to do in my mid to late 30s. It was like cool at 25. It's like, all right, we're going to do this and we're going to get better and we're going to get somewhere. We're going to get on better gigs. And that happened to a certain degree, but I definitely kind of like hit a plateau. And it's just like, man, this is kind of what it is. This is what the work is. And yeah, I think for me, it got really uninteresting and it became like a job. And so, yeah, I kind of stopped listening to music and studying it, appreciating it. It just got really dark for a while.
It's like a when you're doing it all day long, you know, you don't like when you're making music all day long. It's hard to appreciate music, like or like when I'm like when I'm drawing, like I barely have enough time to do my own drawing, let alone like watch other people draw or look at other people's drawings or study, which I actually should be doing because there's so many things out there that I just don't have the time to research or watch tutorials and learn from different artists. And I need to allocate time for that because I find that that's valuable. But like, as far as like watching other people draw, or looking at art, I don't look at art that often. Like I have an Instagram account and I follow some artists, but I'm not like scrolling through it, looking at other people's art. For one, it just kind of like, it makes me, and I hate to sound bitter, but it makes me kind of angry. It's like, gosh darn it, these guys are so good. And then I'm like, gosh darn it, these guys are so darn good. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to focus on myself because I don't need to be focusing on other people's work and getting like angry about it. And I'm not really angry about it. It's just like, I don't know the emotion yet. It's not frustration, not jealousy, not bitterness. It's like maybe like you combine all of that, but like but like a very light version of it, where you're happy for the person and you're like impressed by it, but you're also secretly like, I want a little bit of that, you know. Um, but I can't imagine, you know, I the closest thing I have is doing like commissions, you know, so where it's they want you to do an image of them or a certain image, uh, and I find that can be difficult in itself. Right. Though I guess the good thing is I can draw it into my own style. So which still takes a lot of time, but it's not like it's not my thing that I want to be doing. It's not like I want to draw portraits of other people all the time. Right. But you know, it's nice to be able to do drawing and to create work for other people and they're happy for it. Um, but I can't imagine like studying or getting those basically memorization to an extent and just like regurgitating it on stage. And you those trips, were they really long? Like what's a rough like what's a tour like?
Well, so like I said, in Nashville, it's kind of like a weekend thing. You
So
might
you
do
didn't have
like,
any long ones?
I mean, I would do 2 weeks occasionally.
2 weeks?
Yeah, and I think for Nashville, that's pretty common, um, unless you're playing with like Taylor Swift would be the exception. You know, she has a proper tour that it's like we've got an end date or a start date and an end date, and this is the tour. Most of the time, you're just you start booking your tour probably at the end of the year for the following year, and things kind of get picked up as they go. I mean, this 2020 and 2021 are a little bit different than normal, but say it seems in my experience that people usually have their tours or just their schedules booked out like 6 months at a time and just kind of keep on adding dates as the year goes by. And that can look different for different people. If you're doing a van and a trailer, depending on where you're going, you're probably leaving Nashville at 5 or 6 a.m., driving all day, grab lunch somewhere. You'll load in at the club between 3 and 4, do your sound check, go take a shower, go play the gig at 8 or 9, pack the van up, go back to the hotel by midnight, and that's your day. And then you do that again on Saturday, and then you get up and you drive home, 8-hour drive home, get home at like 2 or 3 or 4 on Sunday, and then you kind of got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to do whatever you want. And a lot of people play downtown, just doing cover band gigs. If you're on a tour bus, you'll probably leave at midnight on Wednesday or Thursday, get on the bus. You'll wake up wherever you're going to play, load in, have lunch, kind of have the day to goof off, and then you'll play at 8, load up the trailer and go back to the hotel, take a shower, get back on the bus, and the bus will head to wherever it's going at about midnight again. And you'll do that, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday you'll wake up about 8 a.m. in Nashville. So it's pleasant in the fact that you wake up where you're playing and you don't have to drive and all that stuff that you have to do in a van. It's certainly more comfortable having internet and TV and all that stuff. I found I didn't sleep well in tour buses though. So even though you could sleep for 8 hours, I never did.
Did you were you with a different band each week, or were you like how is the gig work? Like were you with a variety of bands every month, or was it like you were doing you were the band for a month or two and then you'd find another one, or how'd that function? What was that role?
Yeah, so I played with one guy for about 4 years, but his schedule is pretty busy. It was enough to do it, but I supplemented it with a whole bunch of other stuff. And then since then, I've played with another guy for about probably 3 years now, and his schedule is really agreeable because it's not a ton of work. So it's like actually fun every time we go out. Great friends with everyone in the group, so that makes it a lot easier as well. But I mean, I guess for a while there, especially when I started getting really sick of playing, I was playing with just way too many people. Like if we had a month with 4 weekends, I'd probably play with 3 different groups. One of them might get 2 weekends that month. And then during the week, play 3 or 4 days a week downtown. And I'd usually know at least one person in the band, but a lot of the time it's a different group of people every time you play down there. And you end up having to think a lot. You know, if you're working with the same bass player, particularly as a drummer, if you're working with the same bass player, you don't have to think quite as much. You have a rapport, you know how things are going to go. If you play with the guitar player a lot as well, that really starts making things easy because everybody has kind of a shorthand.
What's a shorthand?
Like you just know what that look means. You know, like if the guitar player turns around and looks at me, or I look at the guitar player, we kind of know what's going on.
Like what do you mean by like know what's going on? Like you know what, like, okay, now we're gonna be doing this. Like
well, I mean, there's a lot of, even within the kind of like the pop music structure, whenever you're playing like a cover band gig and playing with that many people, there's always a little bit of looseness. Because like I said, we're talking about bands that are being thrown together. They're playing tunes probably not exactly the right way. You're faking your way through tunes. Like, hey, do you know this one? Yeah, I know it enough to get through it. You know? And so there's a kind of a lot of improvisation. So when you're playing with people,
what was that like?
It's fun. It's fun whenever you're in the habit of it. That is kind of a muscle that will go away if you don't train it or like keep using it. And so speaking strictly about playing like downtown, if I took a bunch of time off, if I took 6 months off and played a gig downtown, it was a little bit rough because your instincts weren't quite as sharp. You weren't as quick to react. And then after you do it for a week, especially if you play a lot, you'll become really quick again. But again, if you're playing with a bass player and a guitar player that you know really well, like you don't even have to, you anticipate what's coming. So if you don't know the tune or there's any kind of ambiguity, everyone kind of looks at each other and we know how we're all going to react. And so, but a lot of the time that wasn't the situation. I was playing with a whole bunch of different people that I didn't know. And so it's kind of mentally exhausting. So you're trying to navigate a bunch of different personalities and a bunch of music that you don't know on the spot. And it's kind of mentally exhausting. So between that and then going and doing the road thing, which was the same thing, working with people that I didn't know very well in some cases, and then different groups every weekend, you never really get to a point where you've got a rapport with any of the groups you're playing with. You're constantly learning new material. And yeah, it's just mentally exhausting. And kind of exhausting socially too, because you're not working with people that you're really close with. So you're always kind of it's like you're always on a first date, it's just like it just never stops. So, so yeah, I think that's when I got really burnt out, and to a certain degree, that was kind of when I started feeling like that's kind of what being a musician is if you're going to do it full time. Like very few people have the gig that pays so well that they can like do that exclusively and not say yes to anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just exhausting.
How many days a week were you working, like doing gigs? How many nights? I mean,
4
days, 4 nights,
and a church gig on Sunday occasionally.
Yeah. Were you making decent money? Was it a good living?
I mean,
or is it really hustling?
I don't know. I guess it depends on how you define a good living. I think for me, I was making between like 35 and 40 a year. Mm-hmm. It's certainly nothing to write home about, especially when you figure in taxes and healthcare.
So what other ways? What other ways now can musicians make money? Because I was talking to you about this a couple days ago about like just people on YouTube. They're just doing covers, and they're it's well lit, and and they're making money just doing that, or making some sort of getting some sort of like stipend from views. People like seeing musicians play live.
Man, I honestly don't know. I mean, my personal experience is just with playing live, and the money you can make doing that kind of depends on how much you want to play. I know people that certainly made more than I did, and it was because they were playing more dates than I was.
Every day.
Yeah, I mean, they were so like Nashville downtown. Those bars have like 4 shifts, like basically a 10 or 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 to 6, 6 to 10, 10 to 2 a.m. And that's like the work schedule at 24 bars downtown. And so, I mean, if you want to work a 12-hour day, you can, but it's just mentally exhausting. I was never great at it. I would do it occasionally, but I hated it. But I know some people that would play triples like 3 or 4 days a week, and then they'd go on the road, and like totally didn't faze them. That didn't work for me. So, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of my experience has been doing shows like that, or doing road work, and you can kind of negotiate whatever your fee is going to be with the artist or the management company that you're working for. It's probably, for most acts, probably between $200 and $600 a show, depending on who you're playing with.
In Nashville?
Yeah, probably.
And those shifts, or for the day?
No, so for like, if you were going to go do an artist gig or a touring gig, like an artist that you would go see at a venue in your town, it's probably like $200 is the low end for someone that you've never heard of, and $600 is probably kind of middle of the road. No, probably high, actually. Probably middle of the road's probably 4. High per day rate is probably like 6, and then you have people that are like on salary, and that can kind of look different. Some people have like up to a certain amount of days we're on salary, and then beyond that we get like a show pay, and yeah, I think that rate can vary. I know some people that are probably getting like 50 a year on salary, and a couple of others that are probably closer to 80, 85. But yeah, I mean, nowadays the money is just not great.
Excuse me. Did it start like venues, was the money like they're offering getting lower and lower? Because you were mentioning that people are willing to work for lower and lower rates, like coming out.
Right. So I think it's really more a symptom of people not buying music. So everybody kind of uses Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. I do as well. So I'm not making a judgment call on this, but whatever you used to buy a record, and the big artists on a record label would pay for all the little artists that weren't successful yet. They'd get a couple of go-arounds to make records to figure out whatever their style was going to be. And hopefully on the 3rd or 4th record, they'd start having hits, and they'd be able to like actually become a big artist. And then the cycle would go all over again. Right. But now that doesn't happen, so whenever you're a baby act or an artist that no one's ever heard of, the record label won't even take a chance on you unless you've already got like a social media following and all that other garbage. And so like those gigs, you're not really getting paid very well, because the artist isn't making any money. Like the artist is going and doing shows opening for people, and they're probably getting paid like $500 to be there, which doesn't even really cover the cost to actually get a band there, much less actually pay the band. So that's why those rates are so low, not getting any kind of support from the label. And then on the higher end, you've got labels trying to make money, and they're grabbing money from a couple of different areas that they might not have in the past. So in the past, they would get a cut of your album because they financed it. And then you'd go on the road, and that was basically what the money you were making was coming from. You were making some money on your record, don't get me wrong, but then you'd go on the road and like just promote your record. And I think with the road, you could kind of just like break even, really. I mean, you're promoting the album, and the album was selling, so the record label was happy, and your pockets were getting, reasonably well lined. But now records don't sell, so labels are taking money out of tours. They're getting like a percentage of merch and all that other stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure I would go so far as to say that there's actually less money floating around. I think the labels are they're getting their cuts in all the different ways that they can, but it's just kind of like a working sideman. Those rates haven't really kept up. And to a certain degree, there's no like incentive for artists or management to actually pay their musicians any better than they do. Because people will say yes one way or the other.
Yeah, you were saying that like you got young new cadets basically. That are like, this is awesome. I'm going to go on a tour, and I'm going to get paid peanuts.
Yeah, and I mean, I was one of those kids one time. Like it's kind of the way. I'd imagine it's always been that way to some degree, but it's kind of gotten to the point where it doesn't really get a whole lot better. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess, I know some people that do some transcribing, listening to something and writing it down, and they'll do that for people or do that for companies on kind of like their Instagram or YouTube channels. A lot of people do home recording because you can, it's certainly cheaper now than it ever has been to record out of your house and send it to somebody. And so like somebody from Nebraska could have a song and send it to someone in Nashville and have a Nashville musician record it and send it back, for $200 or $300. And I know plenty of people that do that. I'm personally not very interested in it. I ultimately kind of decided I'd rather play fewer dates and make a living doing other things and enjoy the handful of gigs that I play with people that I actually want to play with. And that's kind of where I landed on the spectrum. But I know plenty of people that are making a good enough living. But yeah, it kind of depends on what you want to do.
What would it take to get a fire back in your drumming belly? What would it take for you to be like really I hate to say the word inspired, like what would it take for you to like enjoy drumming or enjoy making music just as the act of making music?
Oh, I enjoy it. I mean, I'm starting to play gigs again. Having last year off definitely was a big help. But yeah, I think for me personally, it's just fewer dates and doing dates that like I actually want to do. And yeah, whenever you've got to pay your rent and your electric bill or your phone bill, you end up saying yes to a bunch of shit that you didn't want to say yes to. And that's where I was at. So I like I said, I'd rather make a living doing other things now and just say yes to a handful of dates. And if that means I play 5 days a week or play 5 times a year, I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with not being interested in playing as well. Like, I don't have to be interested in playing. I can take a break. I think it took a long time to get to have that attitude about it. But yeah, it's just like, if I feel like playing, I'll play. If I don't, I won't. I'm certainly not going to feel guilty about it.
What kind of like, whenever you just pick up your drumsticks or you pick up your musical tools, Wait, let's backtrack it. Like, what are you particularly doing right now? Like, well, what's the like what musical thing are you doing? Are you using any instruments on the computer, or is there like programs that you fart around on, you fiddle with, or is it strictly drums?
Man, I've played a handful of dates in like the last month, and that's it. I haven't thought about it outside of that. Packed my stuff, threw it in the trailer, played the gig, came home, didn't think about it until the next time I had to go throw my stuff in the trailer.
So when you let's say right now, like right after this or tomorrow, not a gig. You're not doing a gig. You're not playing Blink 182. You're not bringing all your cymbals and extra whatever tools to try to recreate your own Neil Peart. You're not in the air tonight with Phil Collins. And you have a moment of like, I want to play it around with my instruments. What will you be doing? What will you be making? What would you be playing? Would you be playing someone else's music, or do you play like experiment? Like, and if you experiment, what does that go like? I remember talking to you about this, and you saying that, like, I don't know if you're recording and you like threw away half of it because it didn't sound right. But you had you were doing something and the music wasn't sounding right, and it didn't sound right at all. But then again, I don't know what that means to you or to me, like, because that's because I'm not a musician. So like, I know, like, when I like play with a musical, like, I have like a little xylophone stuff, obviously, I'll just like hit a few notes. I'm like, that sounds good. Just do it over and over again. This sounds pretty good. And then I move it to the right and do the same thing over and over again. I'll do that. But like, what would you be doing? What kind of music would you be making?
Depends. I can't tell you because it's not tomorrow yet.
It's not tomorrow.
And I really don't mean to kind of like play with you like that, but really, I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if I feel like playing tomorrow, I'll play. If I don't, I won't. I don't want to force it. I'm not necessarily looking to be inspired. I just have a kind of opinion these days, especially now that I'm not like trying to necessarily achieve anything with any of the artistic endeavors that I have. If I really genuinely don't feel like participating with the instrument tomorrow, I won't. And I think, yeah, I mean, to kind of go back earlier in the conversation, talking about, having like a long morning coffee and stuff, like, I want my life to be slower. Like, I want it to be slow and reasonably relaxed on a day-to-day basis. And that's not to say that I'm opposed to struggle or anything like that. But I do want to like leave a lot of space for just kind of feeling out how I feel in any given day. I don't agree with this idea as like everybody's a content creator and everybody has to create a bunch of content every day. I think there's value in it. Like your paintings, or maybe it's on an Illustrator, but like the things you've been doing, like the 100 days of drawing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no substitute for time, right? So if you do that every single day, at the end of 100 days, you're going to be better. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I just feel like there are seasons for that. And there are seasons for I'm maybe not going to take this very seriously or even work on it or think about it at all. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, I've enjoyed playing lately, especially with last year off. I feel like a lot of things that I've been trying to work on and trying to force have like kind of fallen into place just because I'm not taking it very seriously, not overthinking it. And And yeah, I feel like that's still like a valuable place for me to be. And if in 6 months or even next week, if that were to change, it's like, oh, I think I actually need to work on some things, and I'm gonna like put together a schedule, I would do that. And I would kind of be pretty meticulous about like, all right, what's the objective? What do I want to improve? Why do I want to improve it? How am I going to use it? And maybe I'm not going to use it in any practical way. Maybe I just want to do something better. There's value there too. But I would end up kind of putting together some kind of rough outline of what I thought I would need to do to get there. And then I would do it. But right now, I just don't feel like that's very interesting or productive for me right now. And so don't really think about it much. If I were to sit down and play tomorrow, I would probably just goof off.
What's a goof off session like?
Just sit down and start playing and just see what happens. Maybe you come up with some good ideas. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're inspired and it ends up being fun and you get somewhere. Maybe you play for 10 minutes and nothing happens and it's not fun and you don't.
Do you write down any information after a practice session, like what was going good with that? Like there was a note that I was doing, or some sort of musical jargon in a notepad saying this was working?
If I'm actually practicing, yeah, I will do that. And I'll kind of write down what I was working on, what was the goal.
Yeah.
I'll probably have some of the details like regarding tempos and stuff like that, and maybe duration. Not that it really matters, but it's kind of nice to be able to look back on it and kind of see how much time you put into things. And then a lot of it just has to do with like awareness. A couple of things, like how focused was I? Was I actually able to focus for the amount of time I was playing, or was I constantly thinking about other things? Because that happens sometimes. There have been times I've sat down and tried to work on something, and the only thing I could think about was, I don't know, some other obligation or some scenario that had happened like a week ago that it's like you have an interaction with somebody. They never even reconsidered what happened in that interaction, and you just sit there and beat yourself up over it. It's like, oh, I was a jerk or awkward or whatever it is. There's sometimes you'll sit down and play, and that's what happens. That pops in your head, and you just think about that for an hour, or let's say 20 minutes. And so if that's the case, I'll write that down. Like, I was distracted, I wasn't focused, I wasn't present. I just sat down and played for 20 minutes. But I didn't get anything done because I couldn't get out of my head enough to like actually sit here and be present and kind of observe what was going on at the time.
Yeah, it pulls you out.
That's the most important thing, I think, on the little reflections or the notes with practicing. It's like, can I say that I was actually focused when I was working? And sometimes I'm not, and I'll play for like 15 minutes and I just can't snap out of it, and then I'll stop playing for the day.
It's amazing how much that can affect you. Like, I know that's one of the main reasons why I would do like my commissions, and I'm doing my commissions in the morning, because there's always, as the day goes farther along, or like it gets farther along in the day, hours stack on hours, things start occurring, or things that you have to do start being more important, and they start distracting you. And whether it be drawing or playing the drums or doing any type of like art, like what you call creative act, no matter how good that individual is, there is a level of focus, and you're not always at 100%. That I think it's weird though. Like, people don't. I think it's more so prominent with artists than with like musicians. I think people will credit that there's more concentration with like someone playing the drums or violin or guitar than someone who might be drawing. But they that type of focus needs to be there, and You know, you don't see people bashing. Maybe you do. I don't watch a lot of sports, but like athletes have bad days. But you see it's more prominent. I don't know where I was going with this. I think I was going with like somewhere along the lines of like that the layman, the person looking in from looking into a musician making work or an artist making work, they don't recognize that as deep work or deep focus. But they'll recognize like a gymnast, on like a cross beam doing tumblies, whatever you call those, as their focus. Because if they fall, they're gonna hurt themselves bad. We don't have that issue. It's not like we have like razor blades above us twirling around or anything. But yeah, I felt that I have to do that. I have to do those things in the morning. And otherwise I feel like they're like strings, kind of like someone's like little like puppet master kind of pulling you out of the zone. And it really does. I'm drawing the focus. I'm staring at the image, and I'm like, just back of my head's thinking about this stupid thing, whatever, and I'm like, go away, And then you have to, for me, I would have to like draw through that thought for like, so that would mean that I'd probably have to draw for about an hour and a half before that thought just like goes away. And then by that time, it's like, well, I got to go because now my time's up, unfortunately. And, so I can totally understand that level of concentration,
Yeah. And I mean, when I get there and I can't focus, I've gotten to the point where I just try to stop. It's like, if we're here right now and I can't like get focused, just I'm going to sit here and play for 20 minutes and I'll be able to feel good about logging 20 minutes, but it's just as effective as going and watching YouTube for 20 minutes. So
yeah,
I might as well go watch that, that puppy video or whatever.
Well,
I will say this. This is something that helps me, and I wonder if this is something you've ever considered. Whenever I have trouble focusing and I have trouble being present, I try to focus on what playing feels like, and kind of something that's not doesn't really have to do with actually playing the instrument so much. Like, I'll try to think about what it's like. What does the shaft of the stick like feel on my thumb, and just kind of focus on what it actually feels like on my thumb, or like what my foot feels like on the bass drum pedal, but not necessarily like any of the mechanics about playing or anything. Just thinking about what it feels like. And sometimes if I'm really distracted, that can kind of bring everything back in. And then sometimes it doesn't work. So I don't know what that would be for you as an artist. I mean, it could be holding the utensil, but maybe it's kind of thinking about what the tip of the pencil or the pen or, the felt marker feels like when it's rubbing against the paper, stuff like that. Those are the things that I try to focus on. And sometimes it'll bring me back. Sometimes it doesn't. And if that's the case, you just quit for the day.
I think maybe the closest would be like when I'm doing a portrait, I'll focus on like the value. I'll like zoom in real close, and I'll just take the little stylus and kind of just lightly apply tone until like I get the value range. I don't know where I get really. I guess when I get really micro for a second with the details, that sometimes gets me away from it, because now I'm starting to ask questions, and asking those questions means I have to answer them in my mind subconsciously. So I start asking more questions. That helps. I found what's helping a lot is just doing things ritualistically, like habitually. Of course, there's days that I do miss, but not with my live streams. I've been pretty pragmatic about that. I find that's helped a lot. Where like, no matter how I feel about it, it's going to get done and it's going to be okay. Like it's going to be a decent drawing because I've done it so many times now that it's become like second nature. So I think habit really helps with me with getting out of those, getting out of that mind space that might be nagging at you. You know, habit really helps because it like flips the switch. You know, and I remember I was just thinking earlier about how with your response about music, like if I don't play music, it's fine. If I do, great. You know, and I was thinking, well, I might feel that way. Might have felt like that if I was doing like some ridiculous art, like show tour. Like if I was a one of those, so there's art fairs.
Mm-hmm.
People call them art shows. So I have like there's a discrepancy. So there's art exhibitions, which also can be called art shows. There's art fairs, which also can be art shows. You know, there's gallery openings or solo shows, which are art shows. So they're all the same. So some people will say they're at an art show and they might be talking about one of those three or four things. But there's art fairs essentially, which are basically traveling art shows that you have your artwork. You're creating artwork while you're on the road, going to different states, popping up your tent and selling artwork that way. I imagine if I was doing that for 9 years straight, I'd probably be a little burnout. But I've never experienced that. Because I've always had like a job to kind of supplement my art, you know. So like selling art was great, but I've always had the job to kind of supplement. Me right now, I'm the opposite. I want to be able to have the art supplement be the main like income, and have the job maybe be like, you know, like fun money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to flip the script a little bit, and that'd be nice. But I imagine if I was doing that 9 years, because you could do that. I've known some artists that would do that, and that sounds terrifying because not only you have to go across these shows, but in the duration that you're traveling, you actually have to be making the art as well, because you're not, if you sell out, your tour ends. So you have to constantly be producing it as well while you're on tour, which is really hard. I don't know how people would be able to do it, but apparently people do it. I guess they're like making it in their hotel room, or their like trailer is also is like a substitute studio space. I wouldn't know. I imagine that's what would happen, but like the fact that you have to be producing new product along the way would be sounds kind of terrifying to me, or it sounds like not. That would probably put me in a headspace where I'd be worrying about it constantly. You know, I don't know if I could do it. Well, I could. I wouldn't like it though, because it'd be like I would be making work just to sell, and not really work that just like I find enjoyable. You know,
But I mean, it could be interesting to do that one day though. You know, like but I think that's where kind of what I'm getting at. Like, I want to be able to say yes to things because they're interesting.
Yeah.
To me. And that doesn't mean that they have to be like really artistically. I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily going and playing some kind of gig that would be considered high art here. Like, it
have you done that?
No, I wouldn't say that I've done anything that's like that. But I'm just saying, like, it doesn't have to be some kind of like critically acclaimed situation. It could be a bar gig. It just has to be interesting to me at the time when I'm asked. And so, I mean, I think it's kind of easy to look at what you're talking about and saying, like, well, you're just kind of mass producing art and you're kind of going and doing this little tour. And I mean, I think it would be, an individual kind of judgment call, but you could make an argument that's like, oh, that doesn't sound very interesting. But what if next year, for whatever reason, you're like, I don't know, maybe that does sound interesting. and you do it once, and it's like it's an interesting experience. It's compelling for the time you do it, but it's like we're going to start and end, and then I'm not going to do it anymore. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with playing. It's like I want to just try everything on a case by case basis, and I'm trying to not be terribly judgmental or pass judgment on anything. Just if I feel like doing it, great. If I don't, I won't. But doing it full time is not really for me anymore.
Well, it's funny that you said that. I can actually do that now, while before I couldn't, because I was making works that were taking me months to do, and I was making really large pieces, and I liked doing it, but I didn't like the fact how slow they progress. Like,
Yeah.
I like doing large works. Now, I'd love them more if they'd sold, it just felt like I was making a giant piece that could just kind of that's going to hang out in my studio. And I was like, well, I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be making giant pieces, spending all this time, and it just hangs out in my studio. I don't have the luxury of storing that stuff. So, I've always I've been experimenting, which is why I've been really kind of diving into digital work, because all I have to have is a computer or a hard drive to store it, and don't have to worry about that. It's just like it's more space. It conserves space. So I could do that now, while before I don't know if I could, unless I completely changed the artwork I was doing. Because I would go, if I sold all my work in one art fair. Excuse me, I wouldn't be. I'm like, oh geez, I'm out of work. It's great. I sold all my work.
I'll see you next year.
Yeah, but I won't be able to do any more. But yeah, that'd be something interesting to do. Like that would be dependent upon like what happens with certain jobs that I have right now. Like if I had if my school say, you know what, sorry Matt, the semester we just enrollment's down. We just can't have you today this semester. So we'll touch base next semester. But right now, like we gotta fill up all the other adjuncts and full-time artists, full-time professors before we fill yours up. And there just wasn't enough enrollment. I'm like, well, okay. So two things might happen. I might just go to my increase my hours at my other job, which I'm always available to do, and I might do that in the interim, or I could figure out another means. I would convert my schedule around to that. Like if I had that time slot opening, I might be more privy to that idea. Of course, it might mean I have to move, be traveling around. I don't know if I could. That'd be weird. I don't know. That's a good thing I might need. I'm gonna have to write that in my journal. Think about that. Because it'd be like hitting two birds with one stone, where you get to travel and see different locations, and you're networking and you're selling your artwork. I can do that now, but before I couldn't. With my work I'm doing now, I can print off a bunch of art prints and carry that along with me, and I could be a much lighter, and it would be much easier to transport my work now than before. So that's a different thing I got to think about. I'm gonna have to write that down. It's good suggestion.
And man, I don't know. I mean, we're not that far away from you down here in Nashville. They do, well, at least they used to, and I think we're kind of slowly starting to get back into this. They used to do some art crawls around town.
Yeah.
And they always end up being like kind of really fun hangs. Annie and I used to go to them. There's one kind of down the street that we used to go to, and it's always a blast. So, yeah, maybe next time one of those happens, you need to come down here and go meet some people, talk to some people, and see if you can't kind of get scheduled to drop by. 'Cause, I mean, what they basically do is they take areas that might have a handful of art galleries.
Yeah.
But a lot of the buildings that are housing the art are not art galleries. There are all sorts of other random shops or whatever bars, breweries, and everybody just kind of ends up getting essentially a little booth, and all the locals just kind of wander around and get hammered, and buy art, or at least look at it. But it might be kind of a cool thing to check out, just see like what's going on down here. Might be able to meet a couple people. So be your first little trip into doing one of those tours.
Yeah,
dip your toes in the sand a little bit.
yeah. We'll see. I don't know. Actually, you know what? I should. I'm gonna write this down. Write it down. I keep a journal.
We're like 5 hours away, so
I keep a journal with me at all times. Well, not really. It's downstairs, but it's close. It's nearby. It's somewhere in the vicinity when I need to write down something.
Yeah.
Usually it's in a close enough area where I'll write it. I'm able to write things down, but it's,
I'll send you a text in the morning. I'll make sure definitely. Like, hey, art crawl and like art tour. Reflect on that. Figure it out.
So like, no longer drumming. It's more like.
It's really like, I don't want to make it sound like I never play. It's just whenever I feel like it.
Okay.
And so like if I got a call tomorrow, say like, hey, do you want to play on Wednesday? If I felt like playing on Wednesday, tomorrow when I get the call, I would say yes. If I didn't feel like.
What's replaced drumming for you?
A lot of like movement stuff and photography. So I got really into climbing a couple of years ago. And, my wife's a yoga teacher, so kind of studying yoga with her, got into climbing. So all that kind of fits into like the body mechanics stuff that I kind of kick out of with drumming. So yeah, I spend a lot of time doing yoga and climbing, and that's kind of scratched that itch. And then kind of on maybe the more artistic creative side, I've started taking pictures.
Is yoga like could yoga be like spiritual?
I'm sure it could. I'm not sure that I've ever had a spiritual experience, but I will say that it's changed how I think about a lot of other things. It's honestly helped a lot with like kind of my awareness of I guess all of like kind of my awareness in pretty much most things stems from having a pretty regular yoga practice. And kind of realizing like, oh, I'm overreacting, or I'm not present, I'm not paying attention. All of that kind of started with yoga. Like I said, I'm not sure that I would say I've had a spiritual experience, but it's definitely been impactful in other ways.
So it's helped you with being present.
Mm-hmm.
What's being present to you?
For me, it's just not thinking about other shit while I'm doing something. So like if I'm playing a gig, it's like actually just kind of listening to everybody that I'm playing with and not thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner or what's on my to-do list tomorrow or whatever. Like if I'm actually just thinking about playing the song, and more so not thinking about parts, like actually just thinking about like what are the other people on stage doing and how can I react to that or not react to that. That's being present. But a lot of the time you play a song that you've played, 1,000 times, you start thinking about what you're having for dinner, and you're not present at all. Or for me as a drummer, it's like, oh, am I rushing? Am I dragging? Am I speeding up, slowing down? Stuff like that. And it's like thinking about those things instead of like, how does this feel? Like if you're focusing on like, how does it feel? You're probably present. If you're thinking about like, oh, am I rushing or am I slowing down or what's going on? Do I know what happens during the bridge? You're not really being present then. Now you're being analytical.
What's the bridge?
It would be like the part of a song that's different. So if you're listening to a song, you've got like a verse and then you've got a chorus.
Okay.
And then probably a second verse and a second chorus. And then there's like something different. That's your bridge.
Is it like dropping the bass?
It could be, I guess.
Do you know what that's from?
I think of that as just like EDM.
Yeah, like you got to drop the bass.
Yeah. It's a little bit different, but it could be, I suppose.
what's that musician? Billy Corgan.
From Smashing Pumpkins.
Is it Billy Corgan?
He was the singer for the Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Have you looked up Billy Corgan going down a roller coaster?
I haven't, but I guess I will, because it seems like it could be compelling.
I am going to show it to you after this. You're gonna love it. It's hilarious. It's only like 30 seconds. It's not. It's just a silly one-liner. So I wanted to know, Nick. I want to know, like, so what are some life skills or habits or I guess like life skills, life hacks, habits that don't necessarily have to be pertaining to like being a musician, but what you feel are some life skills or habits that everyone should probably have?
Awareness. I don't think anybody has that, really.
Define like awareness. I want to know what your like point of view, like what is awareness to you?
Yeah, it's kind of just saying that as a blanket statement isn't very clarifying. I mean, okay, so let's use an exercise example. Well, let's say this. Let's say you're going to work in the morning and you get cut off in traffic, and they were already starting with awareness. Somebody cut you off probably because they weren't paying attention. They weren't aware of what was going on around them, so they cut you off. And then now you're irritated. And you go to the office and you have a shitty day at the office, and then you go to the gym, and then you're trying to have like a really hard workout session at the gym, but you've had a shitty day and you've been redlining it all day, and you feel exhausted. You don't have a good time at the gym. It's like you need to understand why that was. It started from having a guy cut you off in the morning and then having a shitty day at work. You've been redlining it all day. So that's why you're not having a great time at the gym. Like, okay, stuff like that. Like, just kind of being aware, like, oh, this is how I'm reacting in this situation. Why am I doing that? I think you see it all the time. Whenever you see people walking down the street, it's like you'll see 4 people walking side by side and push you off into the street because they're walking 4 deep on the sidewalk, just totally blissfully unaware of what's going on around them,
and not being courteous enough to like form themselves into a line or scoot off to the side.
And so we're calling it they're not being courteous, but I think it's like it's less it's less malevolent than that. Like, they're just not aware that they're even doing something wrong. Yeah, if you walked into them and shoulder checked them, they would turn around and be like, "Oh, you're the asshole." It's like, you're the one that's walking 4 deep on the sidewalk and pushing me into the street. They just wouldn't even be aware that they were doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. And you see it all the time. Like, anything we do these days, you just see people just sitting there staring at their phone. And yeah, so I think, it's just kind of being aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. Should you be doing it? Kind of going back to thinking about taking a rest day if you need it, whether it's with working out or exercise or, art or whatever, like if you need to take a week off, like let's say you're doing your daily drawings and you just get to the point where you feel like you've hit a wall and it's like, I'm not saying anything. Well, you don't have anything to say. You said it all. You need to take a minute, take a break, which is kind of how I feel about playing drums right now. Like, don't necessarily have anything compelling to say, and I'm not really worried about it. It'll come back at some point, or it won't, which is fine too.
At this point,
I just think it's just being, like I said, just awareness in everything. Like, if you can pick wherever wherever you start, and hopefully it grows from there, and think your relationships are better and whatever you're doing will be better, like you were mentioning thinking about shit in the back of your head whenever you're trying to draw and you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
There's probably a time years ago where you weren't aware that you weren't really being all that present, right? You're just kind of thinking about shit while you were drawing and kind of going through the motions and didn't even really realize, like, oh wow, I'm really distracted.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, just awareness. I think that would be the biggest life skill for anybody doing anything.
How do you improve your awareness skills?
I think I'm not sure I've got a great answer for that.
No?
Yeah, I mean, I remember after having so much time off from playing drums and then getting called to play a gig and playing it and realizing how I hadn't been present for like so much of my professional life. It was like actually playing this gig, I was like, oh, wow, I'm really present. Because I noticed it whenever I lost it. Like I was like in the moment having a great time. And then I started thinking about something. It's like, oh, wow, I'm really, and I was like, this is what I used to work like 24/7, 365. Like I was like never as present as I just was for the last 45 minutes until I lost it. And noticing that was pretty interesting. But like I said, I'm not sure why I noticed it that day. And I'm not sure how to tell somebody to be more aware or how to practice it. I can just only look at it when it's happening in my daily life. It's just like, oh, I'm not being present. I'm not being aware of what's going on. I'm thinking about other shit. I'm not focused on what I'm doing right now. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's it. Whenever you're doing something, actually focus on it. Don't sit there and write down in your journal while you're kind of half watching a YouTube video.
Well, that's another thing. Like, you know, today's modern world, you know, it's always you want it now. Things, there's no lack of distraction, you know, and we're conditioned to almost like just fill up that dead time, which is why you probably value that your hour of coffee in the morning where there's nothing, you know, because unfortunately, like it's going to get worse before probably it's going to get worse before it gets better, you know, like when people like find out like we need to like dial it back and actually do a little bit of self-reflection, you know, because probably this self-awareness thing, the lack of self-awareness is why a lot of people are so sad, you know, like they're not happy, you know, and it's probably multiplied by the fact that they might not be doing something that they might be doing something that they don't enjoy, you know, like let's just be honest, like 9 to 5s can suck. You know, they can suck so much. I've been there. I worked on a 9 to 5 warehouse job. Wasn't the greatest. It was, let's just say it was terrible. And you know, like it's hard to be to be inspired and to have energy when the like your soul is being crushed in a slowly, you know, not day by day, not in a day, not in a week, not in 2 days, like in 2 months, you know, it's slowly, like you're like, wow, this really sucks. And then it just like, it puts you in a mindset of being oblivious, I guess. I don't know. I think what helps for me to be more aware is writing. I've are trying to be more mindful and writing things that I'm grateful for. Just simple, stupid, like it's simple stuff. Like I'm happy that I have this cup of coffee because deep down it means I have the money to buy the coffee, and I have the water to drink it, and I have the coffee machine to make the coffee. So, like, even though it's like just a simple little token, right? It helps, right? And also, there's like science behind this. I don't know the details, but like if you think negative thoughts about yourself, it's like more powerful than positive thoughts. And if you say those negative thoughts out loud, it's even worse. It actually subconsciously makes you feel those emotions more. And so like you create your behavior, or you model your behavior around those words. Because you're saying them so much, you start to believe it, you know? Um, yeah. So if you start saying that you suck, or you feel sad, and or you're unhappy, your subconscious response is going to start multiplying those thoughts, you know. But like if you say I'm feeling good, I feel happy, it's not going to be as powerful. But if you say it over and over again, subconsciously, like there's some, I don't know the science behind it, but like supposedly it's supposed to kind of refire certain wiring in your brain, and it's supposed to change things. That's why I try to avoid the saying like negative things about myself. You know, it doesn't do me any good to say negative things about myself, and it doesn't do any good to say negative things about other people too. So, so I try to avoid that with like a passion. And maybe, you know, Twitter, Facebook, all those platforms that like allow people to be oblivious to themselves, you know, might be a culprit too. I don't know.
But I think that's important what you said though. Like, can you acknowledge what you need to improve on, or whatever, if we're talking about art specifically, without passing judgment? Which I think whenever you're younger, it's hard to do that without passing judgment. You feel like the critique is good or bad.
Yeah.
And it really should be indifferent. It's just like, this is what it is. Was that what I wanted or not what I wanted? Kind of look at it with a more impartial kind of attitude. But like I said, I think that's kind of a lifelong struggle.
I mean, as I've gotten older and more humbled, like humbling. No, as more humble, and yeah, just more humble. I don't even look at like my flaws as a negative thing. Like it's more like, okay, this is where I'm weak at. Maybe I should just work on it. I should just work on these weaknesses. I don't take it as like, of course, sometimes on the very micro, like, gosh darn it. It's more like the I guess the micro part is like, I got to spend time doing it. I got to set time. No, it's not that. It's not even spending time. It's like the friction point for me is like, where do I find the time to do it? That's where I don't have, like, that's the thing that I struggle with. It's like, what block of time can I allocate to do this? And that's where I struggle to do it, to hit those weak points in my art, particularly, because I don't know, I can't find the time, and I hate saying that word, like I don't have the time or I can't find the time, because I like to think that I'm pretty good at like managing my time, especially through Monday through Friday. Sunday and Saturday, I kind of put like give myself a little pass, because after working so hard throughout the week, like I get a little sleepy. I really do. I want to take a nap, especially on Sunday. I really take the lazy Sunday to heart. But like, so like, I hate saying like, how do I find time? I don't have the time, you know, like, well, none of us really have time. We can organize it, but you can't have it. I guess, like, and a lot of people don't organize their time. Like, I know a lot of people that actually, I'm like, let's just say like 85% of people do not organize their time. But if you're an artist and you're trying to do things, you know, you have to have some semblance of organization. At least that's my opinion. I've spoken with lots of artists who've you know, have a very laissez-faire to it, and they're able to do it. You know, they have more time blocks available to kind of just casually get into the drawing or painting or the photography mindset. I don't have it because like I know where my available like time blocks are, and I know if I miss those time blocks, they're gonna be hit at the end of the day, you know. So I totally understand it.
But I think like I said, you know, I don't have children, I don't have pets, and so for me, I do have the luxury of being able to take a little bit more time
Yeah,
to do things, and I have done like the really regimented kind of, I'm going to practice from this time to this time, and there is value there for sure. Um, but I found for me, it seems the sweet spot seems to be somewhere in the middle. I don't do great whenever I like really schedule myself out like that, because I've tried it before, and I'm not sure that the results were like significantly better than being a little bit more loose about it.
it's hard. I'm not.
I very well could just be telling myself a story as well, and I'm totally open to that. But I enjoy working more loosely than I do being really regimented.
Yeah, it's not easy, you know. Like if I'm, okay, like the regimented part is like really pretty much in the morning, where I know what I can get done before everyone gets up. You know, that's really regimented, and then it's kind of like I have some like a 6 hour like time block that I have like things that I do in there that may or may not get done, you know. And then I have some evening blocks that I kind of do some stuff that may or may not get done, but it's still more it's more regimented than the average individual
Mm-hmm.
um, by leagues, you know. Because if you go and ask the average person what they're doing on their day off, most of them don't know. You know, most of them can't give you an answer. You know, and I could say, what do you do in your day off? If someone asks me what I'm doing, I can tell them like the first 4 hours what I will exactly be doing, and then I could tell them like the next 6 hours what I might be accomplishing, but I don't know if I'll get to those accomplishments because things happen. You know, little kid running around, you know. So that is that's up in the air. But yeah, that's a huge topic to kind of talk about, like time management. We went from awareness and segued into time management. I think the
Right,
reason why,
but it's kind of the same thing.
yeah, because
It's
that's
not
how
that different.
And being aware of your time, being aware of your emotions, being aware of that, and it all boils down to like being more humble, maybe like dialing back your ego, you know, because those things to address those problems, you have to like kind of be like your own little shrink, you know, psychiatrist, and you have to like address things that you don't want to address, you know.
Yeah,
You know,
everybody needs one of those too.
yeah, I hear. Do you go to one?
No, but I did. I came to the realization about 2 weeks ago that I probably needed to.
Oh, well, I think there is some truth to that. I've listened to a lot of people, like a lot of like podcasters, YouTubers who talk about that stuff, and they say there's some value to it, because it's a third party, unbiased, supposedly unbiased party that's going to kind of look at your issues in a frame that you're not looking at, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And a lot of people, like maybe 20 years ago, people were like thinking about that, would tease you. I know if you were a kid and you went to a shrink, people or psychiatrists, people would tease you, because they like, oh, or they would definitely tease you. I don't know what they'd say, but I know that would be probably a case. Like you would probably be bullied, and then you'd have to go to more psych therapy
Right.
because you're being bullied for going to therapy. But like, it also boils. I think if you were to go to therapy, you're probably more self-aware because you're like you need a third party you need what's a third party opinion,
Yeah.
and it'd probably be good to have that. But also there's the stigma. There's still some social stigma behind it, and it's getting better. It's getting better. Like with the whole mental health movement that you hear about. But I also feel that the people that talk about that may not be as aware as they're as self cross-examining as they think they are. You know, uh, they may not be as brutal to themselves as they probably should, or more as honest as they probably should. You know, and I get it because doing the being around those like addressing yourself in that manner is very difficult. And I think that's art has kind of art. I don't know. It's probably help as a musician probably help as well. Doing those activities makes you more aware because you're already kind of addressing some sort of weak point in a micro level. Like it's not like you're addressing a weak point on like your how you're feeling, but like you're probably more open to that criticism than others. At least I like to think. My wife might think the opposite.
Well, I think at the end of the day, we're all people, and we're all a little bit mushy on the inside. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think artists have historically had kind of the kind of been labeled as more sensitive, and I guess it's all relative.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably find some that are. You could probably find some that aren't. So, so yeah, I everybody needs a little bit of help being kind of aware of their issues and stuff like that. I'm not sure that I would go so far. Like I know a bunch of artists or musicians, whatever, creative people. Those are most of the people that I know. So I'm not sure that I can sit there and say that people that aren't in a more creative field are less inclined to be self-reflective. I'm not sure that I could make that judgment call and feel like it's a good one. I think everybody's kind of fooling themselves to a certain degree.
The social media has really exacerbated that. Exaggerated that.
Oh yeah, everybody's an expert.
Yeah. And also it's exaggerated it's and I think we talked about this briefly. It's exaggerated really attractive people. Like they're probably it might hit them harder later on because they've been given a golden ticket for a while. We're like where like you get more like you if you're on YouTube and you're attractive, you don't have to even talk about deep level things, like what we're kind of trying to think, what we're trying to navigate right now. We're trying to navigate some sort of like concepts that are above my IQ level, that's for sure, by a lot. So, but like if you're attractive, it really helps, and no one wants to accept that. No one like No one wants. It's like a faux pas. Like, oh, don't say that. Like, come on, man. Brad Pitt was an actor. Became an actor. Got gigs because he was hot dude, man.
Made
These
Fight
people,
Club, get out of here, man. Come
yeah,
on.
like it's shredded. But like, or these people on Instagram, like they're they're able to sell people garbage, like literally they're selling, like, especially the fitness field, they're selling people garbage because, well, they're good looking, they're attractive, they're fit, and people think that the people that follow them think that if they buy this thing that they're selling will give them a physical edge that might get them closer to their physical level of attractiveness or something like that, And I'm like, gosh, man, that's to me that's terrible. Like they're like just selling people garbage, selling people. One thing that there's this one YouTuber I enjoy. It's like Shredded Science, and he just bashes all like the YouTube, the Instagram and YouTube influencers, bashes them about like all the supplements that they're like promoting, because most supplements pretty much garbage. Like you can just eat food and get the same response.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like, no, I'm not going to join your MLM.
Yeah, like the pre-workouts. Just take a cup of coffee. Technically, that's basically what you're getting is a tasty cup of coffee with some other stuff that like makes you feel like it's working, but really it's just a lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
And
have a little protein when you're done, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and so like they'll just these oh, excuse me, I burped. Did you hear that?
I didn't.
Oh, well, it's there. This is forever now. But like, yeah, he's just bashing them, and it's great. I find it great because it's very humorous, but also it's informative, and it puts these people on the spotlight, because they shouldn't be. There's some, like, what was it? Gary Vaynerchuk was saying, like, I'm all about, him.
Mm-hmm.
He's all about being like entrepreneurs and making a business for yourself. But like he said, the statement is like, you also got to think about how you get your money. There's got to be some morals for it. And sometimes I think these people that are selling these products, it's like, come on, don't you have a little bit of like a more like a feeling of guilt a little bit that you're
don't
making?
You feel a little greasy?
Yeah, like, oh, that's like Trailer Park Boys, greasy, right? Oh, that is like, it is greasy. It is. That's a good word for it. It's a little bit greasy because they're selling this stuff like this. This is not gonna. You're like selling them product lies, But they don't care. They're making so much money. They got so many followers on there. They don't care until it's not there. We'll see.
Well, at the end of the day, there's just no substitute for time, which is what no one appreciates these days, which is why all those people that are selling whatever kind of garbage they're selling on Instagram sell stuff, because it's like, oh, this will do it, and I don't have to change anything about my lifestyle or how I eat or what kind of exercise I do. I can just take this one supplement and everything will be fixed. Yeah,
that's true too. Time is important, like how you manage it and what you're using it on. I have a lot of friends. I'm around a lot of people, and I hear what they say. I see what they do, and I hear like what they're. I talk to them, and I listen to how they're spending their time. And sometimes I think, wow, I know that they have dreams, or they have some things they want to do. They want to learn, like they want to I know that they have like some goals, but a lot of them aren't willing to spend the time setting aside and trying to go towards those goals, and also working in a bar on the weekend. You see a lot of people spending a lot of time in the bar, and I was like, man, and I self-reflect a little bit of self-awareness. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh, I spent so much time at bars, and in like a negative light, right?
Yeah, so do I.
And you're like, oh wow, why did I do that? You know, and you can't get it back, but it's humbling to kind of think about it in a way like why, like, and then you're like, well, I'm glad I don't do that much anymore.
Well, especially like that was something that I was getting sick of, like playing all the gigs that I was like. You're playing a lot of club dates, playing a lot of bars. You're seeing a lot of people at their worst every single night, and it's like that was wearing on me in a kind of a negative way. I was just, I remember talking to my mom about this, and she was just like, "Why do you have such a low opinion of people?" It was like, because I see them at their worst 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm not talking about like they're having kind of a rough day. Like I see them at their very worst every day. That's why I have a low regard with people, for people. And it took a long time for me to start reprogramming that, which was what having last year off was really good for that. Because I started recognizing it. Like I'm around people whenever they're not, they're not making great decisions, and it's influencing my opinion of people as a whole. And that's just not fair, and it's not healthy, and it's not productive. So
yeah, and it also like it also influences you a little bit, not just like about your opinion, but like it maybe nudge you like, well, you know what, it'd be kind of nice to go and let loose a little bit more, like,
it didn't affect me that way. I just got really dark.
Really dark?
Yeah, I just did not like people. Just like totally write off groups of people. Just like yeah.
So, Nick, what advice can you give to a musician or to any musical artist or anyone that wants to get into a career in music? What do you think they should invest their time in?
Man, I don't know.
Darn it,
Nick. No, I really don't. I mean, I really, if we're being really honest, I think what I would tell somebody, I would tell them to go do something else. I really kind of genuinely feel that way. Like, don't try to make a living doing this. That's my personal feeling. And I kind of feel like that with other art as well. I think there is a certain person, like, let's use like a fashion photographer, for example. There's a group of people that can do something at a really high level and make art and make a fuckload of money doing it. So I don't want to say that it's impossible. And the same is true of some studio musicians in Nashville and some writers.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that they're actually really excited about what they're doing, regardless of what my opinion of it is. So I don't want to say that it's like not possible to make a good living, because it absolutely is. But I think just be real honest with yourself with what you want your life to look like, and kind of what you need. And if you can figure out a way to do it playing music, great. And if you can't, go do something else.
Don't do a 9 to 5 though.
No, and I'm not necessarily advocating that anybody go get a 9 to 5. I just think just being real honest about what you need. Especially so if we're looking at like a creative endeavor, that let's just make an assumption that you're not going to make a ton of money doing it. Mm-hmm. I think you really need to know what you need out of it. And then you need to figure out how to go about pursuing that. I think for me, that was the big thing. Like I was needing too much out of music. I was needing to make more money, but I also needed to enjoy the experiences I was having, and I needed to enjoy the music and be interested in the music and all that stuff. And it's like you start getting to a point where you're getting conflicting concepts, So like if you're a professional musician, you're going to have to say yes to a lot of shit you don't feel like playing, and a lot of music you don't feel like learning. And if you're okay with that, great, go for it. I mean, for me, I just felt like I got to a point where I was just not interested in learning that music or playing it or listening to it or whatever.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I guess I would just, you got to be honest with yourself. I think you got to be honest with like, how do you make a living? A lot of people make a living being on the road. Do you want to be on the road at 40? I personally figured I had a couple more years. I'm 34 right now. I figured I could get kind of close to 40 and still spend time on the road and be pretty happy. And I was miserable at like 32. It's like, fuck this. This sucks. So, I think it just depends. It's not right for everybody. It wasn't right for me.
Are you happier?
Yeah. Yeah, playing less makes me a lot happier for sure.
If you if you had some time off, more time off now than you've already had already, right? Like you just like think like a few years from now.
Yeah, I mean, I did have all of last year off.
Like if you had more time off to think about it and to start it, what would be like a dream project of yours? Something that you could like casually do that would be something momentous in scale.
Oh, I want to build a house.
Build a house.
Yeah, but I want to do it.
And how are you going about that?
I'm not going about it at all. This is just if we're talking about like a real like crazy long-term goal that might like to check off the box in 15 years. Yeah, I'd like to build a little cabin in the woods.
That would it be like a basement house at first and then you build up the main floor?
Yeah, I mean it would probably be a garage with a loft on the top. Yeah. But yeah, if we're just talking about like something crazy that I'd like to do, yeah, I think that would be kind of interesting. I don't know anything about contracting, plumbing, electricity, carpentry. I could not be less qualified to do this endeavor. But if we're just talking about like crazy shit that you'd like to put on your list that might be kind of interesting,
yeah,
that might be it. It's a little bit far off in the distance now, so I haven't like started taking any kind of action steps, but sitting in the back of my mind. And nothing huge. I mean, just like a little 600 square foot.
Oh, you could do that.
I'm not talking about building like the kind of houses that we grew up in. I'm talking just like a little thing with a little footprint out in the woods.
That'd be like a tiny house.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think you could do that easily. Well, not easily, but like you wouldn't have to be like a professional contractor.
No, but we are going to need to like pass inspections and everything will have to be permitted and stuff like that. So there's a little bit to it, but
I think if you were doing that in California, it'd be almost impossible. But in other states, you'd probably there's like if you go to California, I heard that if you want to like just change your tile in your bathroom, you got to get a permit for it, Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either, but I heard that. So it's true.
Right. I read it on the internet.
The internet doesn't lie. It never lies.
Yeah. There's some things that are maybe a little bit less. I don't want to say that idea is unreasonable, but that is kind of a big one that's going to require like a lot of time to get the ball rolling. A couple of other things that I'm interested in that are a little bit less of a commitment. Like I actually really want to live overseas for like a year, and I don't know if I would just like be teaching English or something, or what I do to get the visa to stay over 3 months. But I think that would be interesting. That and pottery. Pottery is also something that I'd be kind of interested in getting into.
You're slowly moving into the visual arts now.
Kind of, yeah. Pottery is interesting though because you still use your hands, So I think that's kind of the thing that kind of connects all of this. Is it's all very tactile.
Okay. So, Nick, any final thoughts? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share?
No, I don't think anybody needs to follow any of the things that I say.
Okay, Nick.
I will say this though. I think we should do this again, and I get to interview you because we didn't talk about like kind of the specifics of your artistic process, and I think that would be interesting. So
it's changed throughout the times as I've gotten more strict.
Yeah, and I mean it should change, and it'll continue to change. But I think we should do that because I think that would be interesting.
Maybe. Well, excuse me. Gosh. Normally I hit the mute button when I'm about to sneeze or cough, but I haven't been able to. Yeah, I'd like that. We'll have to talk about it in the future and see how we can schedule that and how it would work. If it'd be on my platform, it probably would.
Yeah, because I don't have a platform, but I just feel like you've talked about me a lot, and I'd like to talk about you.
It'd be like the artist, other artist interviews the artist interviewer. I don't know what we titled it, but it would be something. There's also like a other idea I've been pondering is getting like a panel of artists or musicians in this platform because I think I can have like up to like 15 people on this whole thing together. So that would be kind of cool. I don't know how how I would work with it. Like I don't know what's the word?
Just the logistics of it all.
Yes, the word was on the logistics of it. Yeah, I don't know how it would function or how it would work, but I could see it'd be kind of. It's hard enough just to get one person to schedule one person and to coordinate that, let alone scheduling multiple people and seeing if they're able to get into this platform and talk to them. So I wanted to call it like Artist of the Round Table, something like stupid. Because I like to do stupid stuff, I'm never really. I don't want to no matter how serious I am with my like managing my time and being organized with like doing the artwork. The thing like I'm a very silly person at heart, so because I don't know why I am. Maybe because I try to balance that out.
I was going to say, I think that's why you schedule things so meticulously, because if you didn't, you would have trouble getting those things done.
Yeah. So Nicholas Diomedes. I slurred there for a second. Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram, N Diomedes Music or N Diomedes Photo. I'm on Facebook. I think it's just Nick Diomedes, I think.
You think?
Yeah, facebook.com/Nick Diomedes.
Well, Nick, I just want to say thank you again for stopping by and hanging out with me and chatting it up, talking about your musical career. And it sounds like you have a huge like boulder lifted off your shoulders, and it almost sounds the way like the experience sounds like it was a great adventure, but like it like wore you out near the end.
And it took me a long time to be as okay with how things turned out as I am now. It took a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you again so much. Really do appreciate it. And thank you everyone that was watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I will see you again. Cheers. Have a wonderful day.